One. If everyone's enjoying this beautiful Wednesday, if you're not already on mute, and if you could mute, that would be greatly appreciated.
Processes every so often.
We will probably get started around 2:01, 2:02. Give everyone a few minutes. Please go ahead and mute if you're not already muted. Thank you. Crystal, would you like to kick us off, or would you like for me to lead today?
Yes, I can. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I apologize. I have my camera off today because I am sick, but happy to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We have a really informative webinar today with Miss Bridget Portal and Rob Babiak. Hope I said your name right, Rob. And this webinar is going to be recorded. It will be uploaded to site's website and available to view after the fact. It'll be uploaded probably in about a week. So if you have trouble finding it, you need some help, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to drop my address in the chat. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Bridget to get us started. Thank you.
Wonderful, Crystal. Thank you so much. Welcome to all of our California districts. We're so happy that we're here in conjunction with SITE and our Google for Education team, who's not here, but the program is amongst the three of us. We're going to be presenting on preventing data loss with Google protection rules today. And our presenter will be Rob Babiak. We also have Donald Stafford in the chat for Q&A, and I'll be presenting some of the site contract information in terms of the new workspace model, as well as some new additions to the site contract. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Rob.
Thank you very much, Bridget. So here we are today, March the 4th. Apparently it's March Band Marching Day or something. So you're supposed to go listen to some Sousa marching band music. Haven't done that yet. I've been busy prepping for other things. If you're looking for access to the slide deck, the bit.ly link is at the top of the page, as well as there's a QR code that's going to show up a few times today. So that'll get you access to this slide deck for future use. As you know, my name is Rob. I'm an education consultant with the Academy team here at CGWE Amplified for Education. I live up in wintry Edmonton, Alberta, Canada right now. It is a little overcast, so not as sunny as the picture that you see there. Before I was an education consultant with CGWE, I was a system administrator with Edmonton Public Schools for just under 30 years. During that time, I did a lot of server Active Directory management, as well as managing one of the senior admins for our Google Workspace domain. We had when I left, about 17,000 staff and 122,000 students spread across 230 schools. It was a rather large organization. We did nothing manual. If we couldn't script it, it probably didn't get done. So we're here today to talk about DLP, but before we get into that, I'm just going to call out a couple other teams and services that we have. Like I said, I'm on the Academy team, but behind me is a lot of other teams that do a lot of other stuff. There's our domain audit team, and I know as a customer, having an audit every couple of years to find out exactly what's going on with your Google Workspace was a great resource. That way you had something to work from if you were looking for holes to plug and practices to get better at, as well as taking to your leadership if there's something that you were getting pushback on and you needed some reference material to show that you should be doing something. Google Console is great, but it does not give you all the tools you need to do to manage everything properly. So I know specifically I can call out the Google Chrome tool, drawing a blank at it. Go for Chrome. It's a great resource. When you have 100,000 Chromebooks, you got to have some kind of tool to manage that. And there's a bunch of other tools for contacts and email and groups as well that's available. The Education Collaborative, there is a free trial available. More info is on the slide at the end, but it's, again, as a customer, a great resource for you to go find solutions to your problems, report problems before to see if anybody else is having the same problem as you, so you know you're not just isolated in a bubble, or you can determine whether it's a you problem or a Google problem, or maybe one of the other third-party services that you and other customers use. It's a great place to discuss that stuff like that. If you need to determine what kind of license you need or what version of workspace, contacting our GCS team, they'll figure out and work with you for the right education edition that you need. And of course, support hours to work with our support team for when you're working through issues that maybe you're not getting the support from Google that you need, or you want to come to us for support. That team exists as well. So right here in the bold part in the middle of the screen, knowledge transfer. Our core mission today is to empower you with knowledge. We want you leave this session having a bit of information, that aha moment that you can take back to your organization and configure some settings, do some logging, possibly set up some blocking, stop some of that data leakage that's likely happening in your organization. Just giving you those tools that you can do that. And that knowledge transfer is the key item that we're doing today. Following on that, please, please, please do not make any changes to your domain during this session. We want you to be able to pay attention to what's going on and not get called away because you saw a setting that you liked and said, hey, we should turn this on right away. We do not recommend that. We recommend that you take any changes, any ideas that you see today, go and talk to your team about it, do some testing. Definitely communicate to your organization when you are doing that testing and when you are rolling that out. Have a backup plan, have a change management plan. We definitely don't want you making any live changes when you do this. So quick agenda today, the why and what. We'll go over some core concepts, do some rule creation, and then we'll talk about how DLP integrates across the Google Admin Console. So the what and why of DLP. So today, your information, it's not just about costing you money to remediate. It's not about insurance to pay for when there is an issue. It's about losing that community trust, losing that confidence, because that's something you just can't buy back. Once your parents, once your organization, once your community loses that trust in the organization that you are able to hold on to that information, that confidence is lost forever. Second point here, this AI multiplier. In the past, you could have an oversharing issue. You could be sharing documents internally, oversharing more than you should, sharing documents externally more than you should. And unless people went out and went searching for them, they might stumble across them. You might get a couple people in your Google Drive searching and finding this stuff. But now with AI, when you can just ask the AI to go and find sensitive information, literally could just say that, hey, go find me some sensitive information. It will be able to go out and find all that information. And again, AI doesn't have any more access than the individual person does, but it gives it the ability to surface that information a lot easier than it used to. And the third item here, we're talking about operational drag, cleaning up, remediating after there's been some kind of DLP issue or some kind of an incident. That just takes time. Even if you have cyber insurance, that just takes time away from supporting your clients, supporting your staff, supporting your students, supporting your organization. So anytime that you're not doing your regular job, that job just is not getting done. So DLP is not just a word list block. I mean, it can do that as well, but it's also context aware. It's a content aware filter. So it's not just a list of words. It's not just a list of sites where you're blocking. It looks at the content. It looks inside the files. It determines based on your rules, based on your settings, what is and is not sensitive content. Not only that, it does it internally as well as externally. We build these walls, we build these firewalls, we build these spam protection rules, we build these phishing rules around our perimeter, but we have that soft, mushy center that data goes around in, and if it's overshared, and even if it doesn't leave organization, it's still shared internally. You don't need your staff and your students seeing things like performance improvement plans. You don't need them seeing your financial documents. HR doesn't need that information floating around internally because of oversharing. So having DLP activated and running, can prevent that oversharing internally. The third item we're going to talk about is that speed bump item. You can block things with DLP, but warning and logging information so that users have that little bit of a speed bump before sharing, not necessarily preventing them from doing it, but letting them know it's like, hey, this information you're sharing might be sensitive. Are you sure you want to share it? If you just block things outright without having that education, without having those warnings sometimes, then users will find out how to share these information to somebody else some other way, like using a USB drive, using their personal email, creating that shadow IT that overlays and lets people get around the stuff that IT and the organization doesn't want to have happening. So DLP basically scans a lot of different services. It's not just email, it's Drive, it's chat, it does include Gmail, and now even Chrome, the Chrome OS browser itself, which is a very cool feature, and we'll talk about that in detail a little better. And again, it has the ability to educate your users, warning on that sensitive data sharing, both internally and externally. Again, we need to focus on that internal as well as the external. And then being able to enforce that policy. So either blocking sharing or this one right here, revoking existing access automatically. If you enforce a policy where there's blocking or revoking access, even though the file was shared out previous to when that happened, so you could have these shares that have been existing for years, you go set up a policy, do the testing, do the enforcement, it'll actually unshare those documents and block access to them, even though it was done previously. So it retroactively can go and revoke access and block sharing to that information. So today we're going to talk about decoding these features, breaking down these complex settings into little blocks. We're going to talk about building some rules so you can catch how to build a rule that catches real risks without a lot of the false positives. And then deploying with confidence, we're talking about using these audit modes, using the logging to determine what is being shared ahead of time, doing that monitoring before actually putting in warnings or blocks initially. So when we're talking about K-12 data, we're talking about student personally identifiable information, staff PII, that protected health information or PHI, any FERPA protected data, your financial information, as well as regulars, your operational answer key, password lists, contracts, NDAs, etc. What's not included here is like HR records. There's a lot of HR information, any information that your principals have about their staff, about their students. Any of this information is all information that needs to be protected, and again, should be protected via DLP. So 3 to 4 basic steps, depending on how you look at it. You have to define that rule. You have to determine what content is sensitive, what you want to protect, then set up how that is being scanned, where and how it's being scanned, and then what enforcement actions you want to take, whether you want it to be logged, blocked, or warned. And then after the fact, you want to make sure that those items, those actions are being logged and they're being reported and they're being followed up on. Because if you have actions taking place and nobody's following up on those actions, then you don't have any idea what's going on. You definitely want to be informed. You want to know what actions your DLP flow is taking place. Now, Google does provide a lot of predefined templates. So it's not, again, not just a word list that's there. It has predefined templates for that PII and that PHI. And again, also does have regular expressions as well as regular word lists. And we're going to go take a look at that. And those actions all depend on which service we're talking about. Drive has the ability to block, warn, disable downloads. And we see this apply labels, which is relatively new and applies to the premium versions. If you have premium workspace edition, you can apply labels. Gmail, the standard blocking, warning, quarantining, again, auditing only. The newest feature to this is being able to add a footer message to it. Use cases don't quite have one for that yet, but it's nice to have that flexibility so that if you do want to do that, you have that ability. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's using a creative way to add a footer message via DLP for some use. And then chat. blocking and warning in real time in your Google Chat, because it isn't just Gmail anymore. People share in Drive, people share in chat. So having chat rolled into this DLP umbrella is an excellent idea. And we were talking about regex here. If you're not, regular expressions are pattern matching. We have a nice little regular expression spreadsheet here that you can go, and there might be words on here ahead. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. There might be words in here that are not appropriate. But if you go in here and want to type a word, it will build that regular expression for you. So when you take a look at here, you can see there's different types of the letter B, different types of the letter U, different types of the letter L, all different types of fonts and encoding. It will build that. So if people are trying to hide content by spelling things incorrectly, it will go and it will catch that as well within that regular expression. And Google also provides a nice little DLP demo site where you can take your content, paste it into this box, and then it will show you at the bottom here which types of content are in that text block that you gave it. So as you can see here, there's very likely that there's a phone number here. It's very likely there's an email address. Very likely that there's credit card information. Then it scrolls down this list and basically shows you what it would detect. And again, these are Google's pre-done context-aware templates. So if you have information, you can paste it up there, and then it'll show you how likely or unlikely this would match on a pattern match. So when you're working with your documentation and working with your context, you can use that as a test. So now we're going to drop into some demo stuff here. So where do you find these DLP settings? Within your admin console, it's under that security section, under access control and data protection. And within that section there, we'll find the sections where you can manage the rules, manage those detectors, as well as enabling or disabling different data protection settings. So whether you have those insights, that OCR, and the sensitive content storage. So let's just pop into the admin console here, and we'll go down there and take a look at it live. So we'll level set at the top, come down to security, come down to this, come down to the access and data control, and then come down to data protection. And that's where we're gonna find this section. We talked about where those rules are managed, where those detectors exist, and then some of these other settings here, the data insights and the optical character recognition. So as you can see, for some of these things, there's different services that they activate on. So data insights is available for Google Chrome. OCR is available for that Google Chat and for Gmail, and as well allowing that sensitive content to be seen by those who are in the admin logs. That's a feature that you need to determine whether you want on or off, depending on who is and what is doing the investigations within your Google console. The basic flow for building a rule is right here, and we're just going to leave this as a reference document, and then we're going to go in and take a look at one. So in that manage rule sections, we click on that and we can see all the rules that have been built here before. We're just going to go and quickly add a rule, and we're going to just do it from scratch. We give the rule a test, or we give the rule name. We determine what we're going to search. So this is where we can see which services we are going to apply this to. So in this case, we're just going to use a Google Drive. And this is one of the cases that I like to point out. Typically speaking, when you see a drop-down within Google and it's grayed out, you actually have to select something. In this case, the Google Drive, when you select this sort of grayed action, actually is the logging action. So you actually don't have to select block, warn, disable, or apply. You can actually just leave this as is, and that will choose an action. So we'll just leave it as a logging action right now. On the alert section, you can determine how you want this to show up in the alert center, whether it's a low, medium, or high priority item. And if you want this to show up in the alert center, you have to check off that box, and then that surfaces the option to either email all of your admins, or you can add specific admins. Maybe you're setting up a rule where there's a certain manager that wants to monitor some kind of document within your HR. So maybe you want the HR director to be emailed whenever there's some kind of DLP issue with HR departments. So we'll just leave that at the alert center for now. Now you can go in and determine which OUs or groups you want to include or exclude. So you have the option of choosing everything, or you can choose your entire example school and then go in and decide that, well, we do want to do that, but we don't want to do the admin section of this. So you have that flexibility to add a large group of OUs and then granularly remove that if you need to. As a system administrator, I feel that you should be searching everything for everything, because if you have information that's being shared, doesn't matter where it's being shared, you should be monitoring it. You also have the ability to monitor certain things within certain groups, and again, exclude groups and include groups as you want. So we'll just leave that for the entire organization at the moment. Finally, your review screen, you get that name, you get that description, you see which service is being scanned, in this case, the drive files. We can see that there is no action being taken, and here you actually see that it is calling out that only logs will be connected. Before, it didn't actually show that. We're showing that it's all of our organizations for our entire group, or sorry, for the entire OU structure for our organization, and you can see excluded groups and included groups here as well. And then whether you want this rule to be active or not initially. If you're just building a rule and you don't actually want to activate it yet, you actually have the option of leaving it inactive at this time or activating it. So let's just leave it inactive. That way it doesn't do anything. It just sits here, it's in the list, and then we can go take a look at it. And you can see we have a few other rules here. So again, easy way to just build a basic rule that does some DLP. Now, the one thing we did not do was select just realized we didn't select the actual content that we were searching. So we'll get to that in a later section here. So DLP and Drive and Docs. You want that OCR turned on. You want that sensitive content storage section turned on. So we're going to go back and take a look at that under the security data protection, access and data control, data protection. Again, you want that OCR section turned on. You want that information being scanned. You want to set up some detectors, and then the ability to create those rules in Scratch from templates. So we create up a rule from scratch, but then we'll go here through and set up from a template in a second. And again, the ability to use those drive labels to setting up labels in that drive in the label manager, to use those drive labels to search within Drive, to do those custom retention rules within Vault for when you're using that, and then using those same labels within the DLP rules. So I'm going to go in here again, and we'll take a quick look at the detectors here, because we mentioned them previously, but there's the regular expression and the word list. You can see here down this middle section here, we already have some word lists and we already have some regular expressions. We saw what that regular expression code looks like. So in this case, Tide Pods being expanded into a regular expression. And then just a simple word list, a confidential word list that has different spellings of the word confidential. So you can make this as broad or as narrow as you want, and you can combine these different detectors within that. Going into the manage rules section here, I'm going to create a rule from a template, which again shows you these templates that Google has. So we're just going to use the PII for the United States, and we're just going to leave everything on so we can kind of get a broad idea of what is going on here. So we can see by default, this template is looking at chat, Gmail, and Drive. And this will give us an overview of what each one of these services we can search as, or we can use. So the actions under chat are the ability to warn, block, and audit. So again, if you're just monitoring, you probably want to start out with auditing. You can actually have a custom message when you're doing that warning as well. And insert a link. If the user needs further information, you can link that back to your help desk or some other system you have. With Gmail, it defaults to blocking the message, but again, gives you all the different abilities to warn, quarantine, audit only. The quarantining is very interesting when it comes to the Gmail. It actually allows you to quarantine an outgoing message and have an administrator either give the okay or pull back after the user has sent it. And the sending user will only be warned if that quarantine message is blocked. If it's allowed to go through, then they don't get a notification. But just some flexibility there for doing that. And then applying classification labels and adding those custom notes. And again, the ability to customize the message and insert a link to some other external site or internal site that gives you more information. Google Drive, we already covered that. The ability to block, warn, disabling download and printing. Again, keeping that data from leaking and applying that classification label that you can use for Vault or other services. And then how you want this notification. So now when we get to this section, we can cover those conditions that we skimmed over before. So this pre-populates social security numbers, driver's license, passport information, adoption information, employee information, and some other, what do we got here? Individual taxpayer numbers. So you can add and remove these conditions as you want to build something. So if we're just looking for, you know, driver's license and passport information, and then we could even add other content here. This is where we could do a text string, we could do a regular expression, we could do matches from a word list. So you can combine those templates or combine multiple word lists, building the logic around what you do or do not want matched to build your own context aware. So you want to match IEPs maybe when there's a school name involved, but you don't want it to match an IEP when it's going between two department heads that are talking about IEPs. Based on those word lists, you can build your own custom rules based on words, based on regular expressions, based on these templates. So it gives you that ability to be as flexible, as broad, and as granular as you want. Okay. And then within each one of those templates, you have the ability to determine what confidence level Google has that that is what it says it is. So if you're finding too many false positives, and again, this is why you want to do that testing ahead of time. You want to do that auditing. If you're finding too many false positives, you can change this to a very high threshold. So it's only going to match, say it matches a social insurance number if it's very confident. If you find it's not matching enough information for a certain piece of content, you can change that to very low or anywhere in between. So that determines that match. You can also, within this, determine the number of unique matches. So is it going to match when it sees one social insurance number, or do you want to have it match when it has 10 social insurance numbers? So you have the ability to determine minimum unique matches before it reaches that threshold to trigger. And then a minimum match count. So there's the minimum unique match count, and then there's a minimum match count, which differs in the number of times it'll match anyone. So not just unique. So you could have somebody's social insurance number show up 5 times and it wouldn't match because there's only one unique one, but you could have this say, if it matches more than, if the number appears more than 4 times, it will then match based on the minimum match count as opposed to the minimum unique match count. And again, using the and or ors, and then again, using the type of content, you can build a simple or as complex as a content rule as you want. Now I got to zoom out because it's not letting me zoom out. Oh, well, let's try signing in. Come on, we can do it. There we go. Now, let's try this again. And if you're a Google administrator, you know Google likes to sign you out every hour, and I signed in about an hour ago in preparation for this conference. Okay. There we go. Now it's letting me in. Okay. So again, the next step on that list would have been to determine how you were being notified and what actions were being taken. But again, with those conditions, you can build a rule that's as complicated or as simple as you want. And again, we recommend starting out simple, do some auditing, then determine if you need to get more granular or if you need to open things up. Within the Google Drive DLP rule, whenever you have a document and you see this little triangle show up in a share, it tells you that document contains sensitive information. Now we have a demo one up here. You can see again that share shows up as the triangle. And if you go to try to share that, it will give you a little warning here at the bottom. It's supposed to give you a little warning, but it's not giving it to me at the bottom. So we're just going to drop back to the slide deck here. You get that DLP warning, and then it tells you that that has sensitive content. And then when you do try to, depending on how your configuration is set up, when you do try to warn on that external share, it will give you, in this case, a warning. So it's saying, hey, this contains sensitive information. They're outside your domain. Are you sure you want to share it? In this case, this is a warning. So you still have the ability to share. So you're educating the user that there is sensitive information and that they are sharing it with somebody externally. You're not blocking them from doing the work that you may need to do, but you are putting in that speed bump, that bit of communication that lets them know that what they're doing could be causing issues. One of the other indicators within Google Docs is that little shield. So that tells you that there are, again, nice little call out here, limitations are applied based on the policies that were set up by the admins. So if you have external sharing and you can see that there's an the little external sharing flag is on that, you can see that there's that limitation built into that. Within if you go to the file drop-down menu and go down to security limitations, you can even get more information on why this file is possibly being blocked or why you're getting these warnings. So again, more information, more communication to the user when they're seeing that information as to why that is happening. So if they're having trouble sharing something and they're looking at troubleshooting with the help desk can walk them through this to show them that share call out, why that's happening, the shield up at the top saying that there's an issue, and then of course the security limitations within that drop-down menu gives the ability for you to educate your staff. So one of the questions we get, because content compliance is one of the things that we cover within our certifications, kind of seems like DLP. Gmail did not used to have DLP settings. Before that, there was content compliance. But content compliance allows you to search for incoming and outgoing email, either externally as well as internal sending and receiving. So if you are having to modify the emails, change where they go, change how they end up, then you want to stay with content compliance. If you are just wanting to keep your DLP under one umbrella, definitely stick with the DLP rules for that Gmail. It allows that consistency with data loss policies between your different services. So you can use those same templates for your Drive, for your Gmail, for your chat. If you actually have to modify those messages, reroute them, append subjects, block things based on certain specific types of content, then you want to do content compliance rules. I mean, another way to think of it is if your Gmail DLP rule will do what you want it to do, stick with DLP. Keep content compliance to do things, to modify things that DLP can't, because they both serve different tools to do similar jobs. We already covered this briefly within the interface itself, but spelling notwithstanding, DLP within Gmail, you have the ability to block, warn. Again, that quarantine item, very handy if you're allowing users to send an email. It'll be quarantined until an administrator or some authorized person releases it. The ability to apply labels for, again, searching via Vault or adding footers. There's some way that you want to add a footer for some purpose. That's a new feature that you can now do within the Gmail DLP. When a user is sending that email, they'll get a nice little warning saying, hey, in this case, this is a block setting. You can see that they are being told that they cannot send this email until they remove that sensitive content. So the button here has the ability to go back, edit, remove that sensitive content before that email is going to be sent. If it's just a warning, you can see here that message changes, that it still warns you that there's sensitive content, but it gives you the ability to send anyway. So you have to intentionally go and click the send anyway. It does prompt you with that default selection to go back to editing, but it does allow you to allow the user to send that. So it's not blocking the business. It's not blocking what they may need to do. This is an example of that quarantine we were talking about. Again, sends it can't be sent because it contains sensitive information. You can either, again, go back, edit, remove that sensitive information, or submit it for review. Handy feature. That way you can still get messages out when you need to, but somebody else has to give, some other authorized user or administrator has to give the okay for that message to go out. We talked about OCR previously, and this is specifically with chat. It does delay messages by a minimum amount of time because the OCR is on. So it's not quite instant, but it's very fast. Google servers are very quick at doing their OCR. And again, the ability to warn, block, and then have that audit or monitoring mode within chat. And those alerts, again, can get sent to the Alert Center, as well as they can be emailed to all your super admins or groups or individuals as you need to monitor. Now, within Chrome OS, and again, this is Chromebooks, Chrome OS, not the Chrome browser itself. There's a lot of flexibility here on what you can and what you can do. You can monitor the clipboard. Basically, you can monitor the clipboard within Chrome OS. If you're copying, pasting to and from specific websites, you can determine within your DLP rules whether or not you're allowed to do that. You can prevent printing. You can prevent screen capturing, so screenshots or screen sharing or interacting with certain files, all because Chrome OS security and DLP is baked into the operating system, so it has the ability to do this. So we had one rule where somebody built a rule where it said, if you're a student and you're trying to copy from ChatGPT, it'll put up a big warning and it won't allow you to do it. So another way to do that is if you had staff who are using Chromebooks, Chrome boxes, and they were copying and pasting information out of your student information system into Gmail. That might be something that you want to warn them. Are you sure you want to do this? The ability to restrict access to those removable drive, those removable USBs, Google Drive, OneDrive, Play apps, even the Linux within the Chrome OS. And again, those allow, block, warn, and report or enforce screens. The flexibility there is basically if you can think it, it can do it. All right, we are moving along super fast. So best practices, start simple, do the auditing, and then add more rules. So you start with a simple rule, make sure that that works, start with auditing, start with warning, then move on to blocking. As you do that, you don't do it all at once, you just start with small rules, very granular, and then add more rules for more features as you do that. You want to consider your own specific scenario. What data is most vulnerable in your organization? Is it HR? Is it student information? Is it staff information? Is it finance information? You want to make sure that before you start this process, you are communicating your DLP policies to your end users. Much like phishing training, much like spam training, you need to educate your users before just dropping the hammer. Otherwise, you're just going to generate phone calls to your help desk asking why. You're going to get staff complaining to the principals, who are then going to contact your superintendent, who are then going to be phoning you saying, why is this happening? Why are you preventing our staff from doing their work? So you definitely want to have a good communication plan and also have a backup plan when you're implementing this. That's the one thing I've learned is, like, even if you go and screw something up royally, if you communicated it and you had a backup plan, you're still covered. You want to make sure somebody is monitoring and reviewing and updating these rules as they change. So it's not just a fire and forget. You don't just put it in and leave it there. You got to keep reviewing it and updating it because stuff changes. If you have standard and plus, there's a security dashboard. We'll pop over here and take a look at it. Level set up to admin. Come down to security. Come down to the security center. Come down to our dashboard. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, and again, after setting the range up top, it defaults to last month. Let's go for 6 months out. Apply that, get a little more of a exciting graph. scroll all the way down to the bottom where the DLP incidence exists. So we can see here, incidents over time, which severities, and again, that's where those severities that you checked come into play. If you view this report, we can get slightly larger graph and we can actually see some of the incidents that were taken for each service, as well as actions when you have those. So I'd say last 7 days. We want last 180 days. Let's go. Let's back up here. Sure, September 1st seems like a good time. So we can actually see incidents over time, the severity of the incident, where it happened, and what triggered the action here. So we can see drive labels, or we can see what actions were triggered. Alerts, drive labels, drives being disabled, email being blocked. So it gives you a little breakdown of all the different actions that were taken, and as well the ability to start an investigation based on that. So we can see here there was a lot of drive warnings. We can click on this little magnifying glass here. It'll take us to the investigation tool, hopefully pre-populate the settings that we need, and show us the results of that investigation. Here we go. So we can see here, it gives the date. We can see what action, because those actions were populated. This all was populated from that information. And then you can see the exact actions that were completed for these, as well as the rule IDs, the rule names, and all the other details about that. So if we go click into this, since we're here, go take a look at that action. We get all the details about the detectors that were used. We can see the actions that were taken, and then we can even see the content snippets. And again, the recipient, all the different information that you need is within that log detail. So when you're going in and investigating that, all that information is there, and you can get to that from the DLP incidents as well as through the investigation tool. Again, use cases, personally identifiable information, personal health information, making sure that you are complying with whatever policies you have within your state or federal, monitoring for that inappropriate content. So if people are sending, students or staff are sending stuff to one another that's not appropriate, making sure you're enforcing those digital citizenship rules, making sure to monitor, block, warn on those harmful or abusive emails that come along with that data loss. And again, the big one, keeping those overshared or sensitive files from being accessed by Gemini. I know I've done some experimenting with Gemini where I've said, hey, give me a summary of who so-and-so is. And it's gone out and searched all of my email, all of my drive, all of my chats, the information I have access to as a user, and built a synopsis or a summary for different users on my team. I say, who is this Donald Stafford guy? And anything that Donald Stafford has either sent to me in an email, put on a chat, or put in a drive note comes up and builds me a little summary of who this individual is. So if you have information that's overshared and you're asking, you could go in with Gemini and say, hey, give me all of the HR documents about Rob. And if they're out there, it will find them. So definitely want to make sure that you go in, set up these DLP policies to make sure that you don't have sensitive information that is being overshared that can be populated. We have some nice links here about DLP rules. Takes you to the Google. There'll be a lot more detail than what we gave. Information about viewing those DLP drive incidents. We gave you access. I showed you demoed how that works. Already have access to that regular expressions section, and we already gave access to that Google sensitive data protection demo. So this is where you can go in and paste that information. Collaborative DLP crowdsourcing doc. So we had, when the collaborative met, we actually created a public document where people could go in and show how they were using DLP. So what they were using, was there a communication plan? So you could see which users are which users from which regions were using which service and what they were doing with it. So there's a nice little, if you need some ideas or just to see what other people are doing, there's that exact example document that we created in there. So that's a living doc that we can look at there. So I flew through this super fast today. Usually it takes me a lot longer, but we're always here trying to improve our sessions with the Academy team. We'd love for you to click on or scan that QR code or click that link on the left and give us some feedback. If you missed it, here is today's slide deck on the right, as well as a QR code that you can use with your phone. If this is something that you're interested in, it's like, wow, I love this data control stuff. I want to get a nice badge to add to my collection. We do have a data control specialist certification training, much like our other trainings for level 1, level 2, security, Chrome, and data control, where you can take a look and get some more badges to add to your stable of badges. A lot of schools don't have a roadmap. We like to help you build one. The audit, as a customer, the audit was a great tool. I called it out before. I'm calling it out again. There's a link, some information about that. Also, the collaborative. It's a great resource for your organization, for yourself. Again, asking those questions, getting those answers. The monthly live streams, I forgot to call that out. Every month, there's multiple live streams that cover Google updates, deep dives into various topics. Being part of the collaborative gets you access to those. And there is a 60-day free trial. Try before you buy. And I think that brings it to the end. If you ever have any questions, send an email to this email here or my email at the top, and we'll answer them for you. If I can't answer them, I'll find somebody that can answer it for you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bridget.
Thank you, Rob. Always amazing. I have a feeling Rob will be able to answer all of the questions, so we'll field them all to Rob. I saw a lot of great questions in the chat. Thank you all for being so engaged. I did want to take a moment to highlight the Site Workspace program in conjunction with Site, CGW, and Google for Education. We do have the Workspace program. So I wanted to call out some existing information as well as some new information, and hoping this helps everyone become more aware of what's out there to help you. So some of the key benefits of the Site Workspace program is savings. You know, Google changed their model back in October 2025. So all net new opportunities and renewals will fall under the new model. But with the contracts and the relationship we've all built together, we are able to offer California and the site customers amazing savings and discounts on both your net new and renewal opportunities for Workspace Plus specifically. There's ease of procurement through that contract. We have a great team to support. Roz and Darian are probably the contacts you're most familiar with. I support them in the background. And there's multiple layers of support in terms of escalation and complementary onboarding as well. So those are some of the benefits. If you're not already familiar, I did want to highlight the Workspace Plus pricing and what that looks like for this year. You can see it is broken out into net new and renewal. I will send this deck over afterwards so you can review it at your own time and leisure as well. And then some big announcements. If you have not heard, we did add all CDW amplified services. So the audit Rob was talking about, the collaborative, the admin search, those are now on the site contract. So really excited about that. And we've also added AI Pro. So again, I'll send this over so you can review it, but I did want to let you know that there is an additional discount. You can see that highlighted on the slide as well. And we can also do a lot of consultations on what your AI roadmap looks like. Google made some really exciting announcements for our Plus and teaching and learning customers, where Gemini, some of the advanced features of Gemini are now available in Slides, Sheets, Docs, Vids, and Gmail. So lots of great things coming. This is the paid edition, which is called AI Pro. Highlighting some of our SaaS and services, just to kind of close the loop with DLP. An audit could be a really great next step. So we do audit workspace domains. It's one of our core services. The value that we provide, if anyone's had an audit, I don't know if I can see any emojis, but feel free to share your love there. It's going to analyze your Google domain in depth, looking at every single service and setting in the admin console, and then comparing that with educational best practices. So it's going to kind of call out what you have going on now, and then maybe what you should consider setting those to help, manage your infrastructure and make that more secure. And it also provides technical resources. So a really great consideration if you have not had an audit. And our technical support team, what makes us, I think, so amazing is all of the people who help you all in the background. People like Rob and Eric and Donald who are here with us on the webinar. But we have a great technical support team. So we have about 10 or 12 dedicated technical support analysts to help you all manage your Google Workspace environment. And so I recommend that as well. And I just want to highlight the two GCS you're probably most familiar with. GCS is Google Customer Success Specialist, and that's Roz and Darian. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to them directly. You can reach out to me, and we'll follow up with both decks after the webinar. That's it. I thank everyone for coming. Another shout out to Rob. Thank you so much for your expertise.
I see all the educators are in chat here. I mean, Jay's here, Eric's here, Kyle's here, Donald's here. I mean, this is crazy, all the big names we got today.
I know, we have such a great team. It really is the backbone of who we are, and really great customers. Thank you for the engagement. The questions are always on point, so we really appreciate you guys showing up and being engaged. I saw a hand go up. Would someone like to ask a question? We do have about 9 minutes left. No one today? All right.
I'm used to being crammed into a 45-minute session or a 50-minute session, so went early. Oh, Peter's hand's up.
Hello. Yeah, I did have a question. I know at our last event at our site regional group, there was some discussion around GoGuardian safety integration. And I didn't know if there's any update on that as far as that's concerned, because I know a lot of us are struggling with kind of those safety concerns when it comes to students and flagging those emails or messages that may have content that we want to be aware of, but by default it's getting blocked. So a lot of times we don't see those safety concerns if kids are going out for like self-harm, things of that nature.
When you say getting blocked at which level? You said the concerns are being blocked. At
the email level. So if there's a student emails something, that has, raises red flags, if they're using profanity or something like that in the email, it's getting blocked. So the intended recipient is never seeing that, and we don't get notified of those blocks.
I definitely recommend reaching out to our support team for that. I guess that kind of depends on how it's being blocked, whether it's being blocked by something that you have set up with DLP, or it's being blocked by Google as spam or as phishing. If you've had any examples, like if you have concrete examples of that, where you can go and check in your email log, the email log search will definitely show you any email that's been sent to your organization. It will get to at least that point, and then you'll get more information based on what you see within that email search itself.
Yeah, no, we've had cases where a student was talking about self-harm. He was emailing to a staff member about those concerns, and the staff member never saw those emails. And so it wasn't until we actually were questioned about it and we went and looked in the block log that we were able to retrieve those emails and see the content of it. But there's no way to set up a notification. It just gets blocked.
Yes, I mean, an email, if it is getting blocked at the email log, so like at the border, so to speak, of your workspace, there will not be a notification because the blocks they're not logged. Finding that email within the email log search and then seeing within the details of that why it's being blocked would definitely give you an idea of how you need to change your bounce messages or how you're being notified on that. But again, it kind of all depends on that situation with that specific email to determine how that was being blocked.
Yeah, and at our last meeting, they talked about that Google was working with GoGuardian to do something. So we didn't. That's why I was asking if there was any update on that integration with GoGuardian as far as those safety concerns for those.
Yeah, I don't have any information on that, but I'd be happy to follow up on that if you send me an email.
Great question, Peter. I have not heard. We were with Google on site last week. The weeks kind of blend together in the best way, and I have not heard an update there either. Last call for questions. Should we take one more, Rob? It looks like Scott just posted one in the chat. If a DLP rule is set up, you need to, oh, sorry, assumed it was question. Okay. Peter, if you'd like, I'd like to reach out to you after the webinar. If you want to go ahead and put your email in the chat, if you feel comfortable doing that, and then we can get you connected even quicker. All right, wonderful. I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you all again for coming. All feedback is welcome. We really appreciate the questions and the conversation at the end too. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and a big shout out to Rob and the rest of our CGW team for supporting today.
Thanks for coming.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.